there, everybody. Derek Craig here from Magnus Broadheads, and today we are set up at my filthy workbench. It's always too cluttered. But we're going to do a video on sharpening the Magnus Stinger and the Killer Bee broadheads. These are the broadheads that are non-serrated, okay, a straight edge broadhead. And I've got a package of each here. They're both in a 4-blade configuration. But the principles apply, whether it's 2-blade, 4-blade, what have you. So anyways, we're going to go over these. We're going to take a look at how to sharpen these back at your shop and also an effective way of doing it down and dirty kind of in the field. So that's where we're at with this. Got some things set up here, and we're just going to go over the basic principles. So right here, I have a 125 grain Magnus Stinger 4-blade right here. I've shot this into a target a bunch of times, so it could use an edge on it, okay? So let's talk about the basics of sharpening these and the differences of, say, the buzz cut or the serrated version of these. We've done several videos on the buzz cut because we get a lot of questions on how to sharpen around those serrations. The same basic principles apply to the straight edge. However, you can also use a different tactic if you want to. And what do I mean by that is on the buzz cut versions, we basically want to use a stone and a jig, and we're going to pull that edge back across the stone. That way we don't mess up the serrations. If you use, say, a pull through type of sharpener, you're going to mess up the serrations. Well, the beauty on a Stinger or a Killer Bee type of broadhead without the serrations is you can actually use a pull-through sharpener on these heads. So let's say you are in the field, okay? So this would be you're on a hunting trip and you just want to put an edge on a broadhead, or maybe you don't have an expensive jig or whatever to actually sharpen a broadhead. You can use a pull-through sharpener on these heads. And what do I mean by a pull-through sharpener? This is just a down and dirty generic pull-through sharpener right here. You can buy these on Amazon or eBay or your different hunting supply stores for a little bit of nothing, actually. And they don't take up much room in your pack. They're super lightweight. So this would be something like if I was going on a hunting trip and I wanted to bring a sharpener for knives or broadheads or whatever, this would do in a pinch. The downside to these is you're fixed by the angle. You got a V notch in here, and you're locked into that. You can't change it, can't customize it. So on these heads, basically, what we can do is we can set this up, and we can carefully pull this head through here. Now, probably the safer way to handle this would be to have this on the end of your arrow shaft, but you can sit here and go from side to side. This one right here works really well on 4-blade and 2-blade heads. What you see is on the 4-blade, you got the bleeders here, and basically the notch on this is shallow enough that the bleeders clear. Okay, so you can use this type on the 4-blade or the 2-blade. An alternate example of a pull-through sharpener would be, say, this type of pull-through sharpener, and there's others. And this will work well on a 2-blade head. The problem is when you go and try and do this on a 4-blade, these posts are so tall, they actually end up hitting the bleeders, okay? And it ends up being a real problem. So this type of sharpener is not going to be a good choice for the 4-blade version. You can use it on the 2-blade, but not the 4-blade. So those would be good in a pinch if you're in the field. Or again, if you just don't have an expensive jig in your shop. I mean, I use these all the time for knives in my shop. It's not what my choice for broadheads, but it could do in a pinch if you had to. Okay, so how do we really recommend the proper way to sharpen these, especially in a 4-blade configuration? But even in a 2-blade, this is the best way to do it. Well, would be to use a stone and it's some sort of jig. Okay, in this case, this is just stone, and this is a KME broadhead jig. There's a couple others out there that are just this clamp head that you can use as well. You can also use sandpaper and get varying grits of sandpaper and use a KME or these other jigs and get your heads very sharp, okay? Another thing would be like a Lansky type of sharpener. And the beauty of, say, the Lanskys is that you can vary the blade angle and you can get it real exact for however you want your to sharpen your broadhead, I would suggest you take like a Sharpie and do along the blade part, and then you can set your angle perfectly and you can knock all that stuff off. But we're going to focus today on the stone and the KME. The same principles apply to the other jigs, or if you're using sandpaper or you're using a landscape. Okay. So how we're going to do this is we really need to first disassemble this head, and you're going to need a number 1 Phillips screwdriver. Okay. Now, number 2 is the most popular size of Phillips screwdriver. That would be the typical household screwdriver you're going to use to, say, unscrew a light switch cover, or if you want to run a drywall screw into the wall, it's going to be a number 2 size. Number 1 is slightly smaller, but it's not like the little micro like screw or eyeglasses size. Okay, it's a reasonable size. There's 1 screw in there, and that's all you got to remove. So we're going to start by first removing the screw. My workbench is real handy here because the boards, it kind of holds it as a jig. So, but you want to be very careful because even a dull broadhead is going to cut you. Okay, and I'd probably rather be cut by a sharp broadhead. But we're going to first remove that screw, and then we are going to set it aside, okay, where we can't lose it. All right, and then we are going to carefully slide the main blade out of the ferrule, okay? And then inside, when we get this, we can take this down further if we want to sharpen the bleeder, okay, by taking out this little block. There's a spacer block in there, usually a little flathead. In this case, the Phillips screwdriver did the job, and you can see the bleeder in here, and we can pop that bleeder out. Sometimes they're stubborn and you're going to grab it with, say, a pair of pliers. It all kind of depends on the fit. But those are the 5 basic components. We got our little tiny screw, we got our ferrule, we got our spacer block, and then we've got the bleeder, and then the main blade. Obviously, there will be 4 parts in, actually only 3 parts in a 2 blade. You got the screw, the ferrule, and the main blade. Okay, so again, I don't want to lose my little screw. I'm going to set my little block and my bleeder away because we're just going to focus on the main blade and set the ferrule away. Okay, so I have myself my sharpening stone right here. And in this case, we're going to put this head into the KME jig. And when we do this, and again, this would apply to the Lansky or the other jigs, we really want that blade to be flush with the same line, parallel to the same line as the jig itself. In this case, we're going to tighten it down. Okay, and then we're going to put it in the roller jig that the KME supplies here. And then really, that's when you can tighten it down. And really, from that point there, it is simply just pulling and dragging to sharpen this blade. And this is how we also sharpen buzz cuts, serrated versions of all the heads. So this is going to apply to the stingers, it's going to apply to the killer bees, and even the black hornets. You're going to sharpen them all the same way. It really is that simple. Okay, you're going to do that on all sides, and you can vary. If you got different stones, you can vary the grit on the stones. Again, if you're using sandpaper, you vary the grit. You can leather strop this and get this edge as sharp as you want. Okay, and so once that edge is sharpened, we would basically pull it out of the jig. And we, on all of our broadheads, they have a varying tip angle, and so we would go ahead and line that up. So now you can see that the tip, I want to run that as parallel as I can to my jig. Tighten it down. Put it back in my jig, and then with moderate pressure, making sure I just have that tip, I can sit there and I can sharpen that tip. It really is that simple. So I'm going to do both sides on all of our blades. This out of here without cutting myself. They're all back sharpened. Again, we could reposition this head in here so that we could sharpen that back edge as well. So that is basically it. You're going to repeat that on all sides of this blade. You could take your bleeder, and you could also do the same thing with your bleeder blade and putting it in your jig. It's a little more delicate to handle because it's so small. You can get it in there, get it parallel. clamp it down, do the exact same thing when it comes to the bleeder, okay? It really is that simple. Again, you could disassemble this blade and you could run it through a pull-through sharpener such as this. It's going to be a little trickier. You want to get kind of a solid where your sharpener doesn't move, and you could run it through a pull-through sharpener just like that. Obviously, you could run it through a pull-through sharpener just like that as well. You could do the bleeder, although the bleeder is so tiny, it's going to be very difficult. Might even be better to grab it, let's say, like some needle nose pliers or something. You could do that. If you got in a pinch, you could do that and make it work, okay? So, again, that's kind of really the basics. It's pretty much a fundamental broadhead when it comes to sharpening. I mean, there really is not a lot to it. There's no science to it. Again, you're in the field. This right here is the key, okay? That would be, you're in a pinch. All right, so once you get it sharpened, we're going to reassemble the head. Again, this is the 4-blade. So in the 4-blade, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert that bleeder into it. The bleeders, a lot of times, sometimes you just got to, they slide in perfectly, and sometimes you got to kind of tilt them in. In this case, you can see, you want to make sure it is fully seated all the way down. If there's any gap there, then your block's not going to go in well, and then the main blade's not going to slide in. So now we get the block in there. Now remember, if you've done this properly and you've sharpened this entire head, everything's going to be razor sharp. And even if it's not, you want to be very careful, okay? It should, at that point, if you line everything up, everything should go in fairly easily. You're not going to have to like pound it in or really drive it in. You can see that just slid right in there. I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to show you one more time how easily it should go in. Put my retaining block back in here. Okay, everything's lined up. You can see it slides in literally that easy, okay? Then once that's in, we're going to take our screw and our screwdriver, and we are going to tighten it down. That is really all there is to it. Now, that in the field is going to get things done for you. In the field, you're probably not going to have a spin tester, okay? So if I was doing this at the bench, I would put this on an arrow and a spin tester. So let's do that real quick just to show you. All right, to spin test these, we're going to need a spin tester. This one is one I picked up years ago. There's all kinds of different ones. You can pick them up for a little bit of nothing on, again, Amazon or your hunting outlets or whatever. eBay, you can find these, no big deal. You're going to set this down on the bench. You're going to put your broadhead on an arrow, and you're simply going to take and spin this head. And you're going to look for any wobble. Now, one of the best ways that I've found to look for wobble is to take a cardboard box and basically put it up against the tip of the arrow and spin it back and forth. If you have any wobble, you're going to see it walk across there. And if you don't, you're going to end up with just a tiny little mark. I don't know if you can see it. Just a tiny little mark is all you're going to see on there, okay? And then you know it's spinning true, okay? There is a slight little bit of wiggle room of adjustment in these. So if you get some, you can loosen the screw and you can adjust it. But that's how I would do it if I was on a bench. Again, if you're in the field, you're probably not going to have that option. So it really is that easy, folks, in sharpening the killer bees and the stingers. Again, this actually even applies to the black hornets that are not in serrated version. On using the jig, it applies to all of our broadheads, basically. But again, you can get away with, on the smooth edge, you can get away with a pull-through sharpener, okay? That's it. I hope that answers any questions. It's a pretty simple process, really, cleaning up these edges. And, it's going to extend your hunting season and, hopefully give you some success out in the field. So, as always, God bless. We hope deer seasons are going great for you. Always remember that Magnus broadheads come with a lifetime, no questions asked, a warranty. You damage a head in any way, shape, or form, and we will replace it. for you. So check us out on magnusbroadheads.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can also get in contact with us there. As always, God bless. Hope deer seasons are great. See you in the next video.